There we are. Hello, my friend.
Hello.
We are back again. So the first people are tickling in, which is great. Nice to see that. Hello, everyone. So, as I wrote in the comments, you can ask questions to any time in the comments on whatever platform you are. We will see them, and we will go over them. So we basically mark them, and then we will definitely go to them and discuss those questions. Would be nice to see a lot of those. So, Daniel, thanks for joining again.
Absolutely.
So I was on your podcast. You were on our podcast, on the one where I have with Dennis on our tech journey, and now you're on my podcast. So we're sharing a lot of podcast sessions, I think.
Yes, I think it's great. We have so many channels, opportunities. So I think it's great. And everyone, hi, and I'm super happy to be here. So as Adrian said, any questions as we go through the flow, any questions you might have, I will be happy to answer them. So yeah, here we are.
Okay, let me quickly check. Okay, microphone check is good, because last time I recorded basically from a microphone 1 meter away from me, which I was thinking I was recording to that one, which wasn't the case.
Ouch. Okay.
Sounded terrible in the first 2 minutes. Okay, never mind. Communication. So communication is not only about words, but about a good hardware as well, right? But that's a different topic for a different day. So we're talking about communication in tech today, specifically in tech, because the interesting part, and that was the hook for the event, is that we have a lot of information going on. There's a lot of transmitting and receiving, not only on the computer side and server side, but as well on the people side. And the interesting part is that I see many teams were basically calling themselves teams, where I would suggest and assume that there is a lot of communication between team members going on. So, you need to work on a task, and person A is doing that, person B is doing that, seeing this, giving feedback, giving advice, these kind of things, right? To get the task done as good as possible. But interestingly, most communication happens in Jira tickets and pull requests. So comments. That's very interesting. It's extremely asynchronous as well. So when you see this, right, when you see this kind of dynamics in a tech-driven environments, since you're a book author of that one here right now, and you are basically working with a lot of tech people, how do you see these problems, and how do you try to engage these problems in your career?
Right. Yeah, it's first of all, let me say it's not an easy one, of course, because communication is complex, right? And it's complex, and it's scary. So the fact that you called it asynchronous, it really means that it's the safe option, right? Because it gives us time to think, to react, to absorb information, and then it at the same time, give our feedback in a safe and well-thought manner. But when you think of it, it's absolutely not the way normal communication works, because the interaction is immediate. It comprehends my idea, your idea, and a mix of them. It's a stimulus and then response, so it's like a flow. It never really stops. So you seldom have the opportunity to stop, think, and then let's say spit out your idea. Yeah. So we're talking about two different things, really. And one, it feels safer, the other feels scary, and that's absolutely normal, right? And I've seen it many times with teams, with the people I work with, like before starting coaching individuals and teams for the language and for the communication part. I was a leader myself in a corporation. So I have a million different examples of how I used to call them the communication breakdown, because I love music and it's one of my favorite songs, Communication Breakdown. But at the same time, this is exactly what happens, the breakdowns there. So we are there, we are sitting potentially even next to each other, and we can't communicate, or we can only slowly and awkwardly go through this asynchronous communication. Let me give you an example. Okay, many years ago, I was I had, one of my tasks was to communicate with clients, right? And we had a big issue with one of my clients, and I wasn't really a fan of immediate communication, so I was trying to stick to emails. But the more I sent emails, the more the whole thing escalated. So like it started like a small normal thing, and then it quickly became something too big, until one of my managers came. Daniele, can you just call the man? Maybe it would be easy. And I was, of course I should call him, but like it was the shy me, let's say, no, don't call, another email. Yeah, eventually we get it sorted, but obviously it's not the way. So that's when I learned, okay, a phone call is better than an email many times, right? And that's how I built up my knowledge and how I changed perspective on that, Like I already knew the thing. I already knew that direct communication was better. But of course, I just couldn't do it. And I don't know. Have you seen, like, have you had similar experiences? Is that what happens to you as well? What you see day in, day out? I don't know. I'm curious, because for me it was a big one at the time, And I don't know.
So I needed to smile because I have that so often, that people, there is this issue going on and people writing emails, and still there is no solution. People keep writing emails, right? And you need to, and everyone is packing you on CC, right? And you're reading those emails and you see there's no progress, and people keep doing this email stuff, right? This is then the point where I sometimes ask myself, okay, I call now the people, and I invite, I get everyone into that call, and then they ask, okay, what's going on? And I say then I want to discuss what you just discussing there in this long tail of emails, and they're a little bit like, okay, let's do this then. Let's have it quite often. But that's the interesting part, they are surprised by that. And in that moment, you don't see the resistance anymore, because you said this is uncomfortable, right, to do this. And this uncomfortable thing is, in fact, resistance. It's the standard resistance we have, the resistance to change, the inner core, what I train leadership as well. It's like the thing which is holding us back. It is making us afraid of something. But when we are in that thing, it's okay. It's all gone, right? And that was the case as well. So when we do that, normally in some minutes, the issue is solved. But you make more progress in several sentences, of dialogue, than you had in days of emails, which were painfully asynchronous over yet next day, then the person wasn't there in the morning, and these kind of things. And I know that for years, probably for 20 years, and writing emails, back then, Slack communication, Teams communication via ticket systems. Personally, I prefer to just call a person still. And I want to have an environment where I can do this. So as a CTO, as a founder, I try to push an environment where people can do that. So it should be okay. So what do you think? Because that is a controversial topic right now. So developers often say, I don't want to be disturbed in work. I want to be able to do deep work, right? But I'm opposing this. I say, if that is the case, if we create an environment where no one is allowed to disturb someone else, to ask questions, to provide feedback, or these kind of things, then we don't actually communicate teams. I don't mean Microsoft Teams, I mean real teams, right? So we are not a team then, and we don't communicate like humans should communicate to actually solve a problem. How do you see that? What is your opinion as a communication specialist?
Well, my opinion is that we should create an environment where it is okay to do both, to do deep work and to talk to each other, right? It is a challenge, and I do understand that. But at the same time, the message should be we have an open door policy. Maybe I can use like either a real or virtual do not disturb sign for, I don't know, for a couple of hours. I need to complete this.
Mhm.
But then the message should be that other than that, I'm available. Okay. And when a leader jumps in, it needs to encourage situations of exchange, being them formal, informal, group exchange, one-to-one, doesn't matter, but it should be there. Okay. And especially, senior to junior, or, like different areas, different expertise, doesn't matter, but there should be an open dialogue. That's the way I see, and that's the way, every time I was dealing with a team, I was always pushing for that, like questions. Yeah, ask your questions. I'd rather you interrupt me than having to fix things later because we didn't communicate,
Mhm.
And the same applies to everybody. You normally in the same team, you have people with more experience, people who have been in the role for more years, so there should be an open channel of communication there. And I think there's no other way, there's no way around it, because people might argue, say, for example, yeah, but my job is coding, so I just need to sit there and do my thing. But it's impossible that you are alone. Like, no, there doesn't exist a job position that you can do on your own. I've never seen one. Come on. It's, yeah, I don't know. That might exist, but surely not the kind of positions we see every day. So it means that every kind of work we do is teamwork, regardless of what we might think. And so that's where we need to encourage the environment. Now, obviously, this goes on different levels. It's the environment, the personal attitude, the language we use, the seniority level of a team. So I think we need to make sure that we analyze the situation, we observe, and then we are, in a way, precise on how we address each of them. So is it an environmental problem? Okay, let's work on environment. Is it psychological? Let me talk to the person one-to-one. Has he got to do something with the language? Okay, let's, I don't know, improve that language. Doesn't matter, but we need to observe. And the goal is always the same: create a sort of open environment where people can share and feel safe to share. Yeah, I hope
How
I've
would you
answered your
create?
question.
Yeah, you did. I want to follow up on that one. So
Cool.
now tech leads are listening to this, right? And how would you cultivate such an environment? So imagine you are in an environment where this is definitely not the case. So we are in a heavily feature factory environment, deadline driven. The team lead is actually not a team lead. It's just a proxy for the actual, managers who are somewhere else, right? Having like this envision of how of the work of the next days. So they pack it into some tickets. There's a huge gap between, and you have this environment, and you want to create an environment where the developers who are stressed by the tickets because they're already stacked up, there's a lot of backlog, there's a lot of ongoing stuff, they are afraid to speak up, old school stuff. How would you start as a communication specialist in tech to improve that situation as a tech leadership person, team lead, engineering manager, or CTO?
Yeah, so it sounds like a nightmare, but I suppose it's the reality in many
That's the reason I ask.
companies. Yeah, and I had an idea myself back in the past. I was in a very busy environment. I'd say, like the first thing that came into my mind back then, and even today, would be, no matter how busy the situation is to put in the calendar 15 minutes with each team member in the first week, if possible. Okay, it's hard. Don't get me wrong, it's hard. And when I had to do it, I was a team leader, but I was also responsible for client accounts. So I had to sort of combine the two roles. But I gave myself that objective, and I managed to put 30 minutes for with each team member in the first 10 days. Okay, because like the situation was maybe not as bad as the one you described, but still, you had team members who didn't communicate, senior team members, junior team members, and someone who was looking after a special account. So nobody can understand what I do, so it's pointless for me to talk to the others, etc., etc. Yeah, people wanted to leave, people wanted to stay, But then I said, okay, I need to be there 30 minutes with each one of them, and I need to understand what is going on in their mind. And so that's the first step, I think.
So it's not open. It's not an open door policy, but you sit down actively next to the people and be with them, actually.
Exactly. Well, you want to see what they do. So you want to see, okay, I sit with you and you show me what you do, right? And how you do it. And then we go to a room and we talk, and you tell me openly your feelings, So that's how you get started, yeah? Because there is no other way. And then once you have all this massive amount of information, which is a lot, but at the same time, it gives you a better understanding of the dynamics. So for example, the senior guy who's still doing things old style, okay, but it's missing on opportunity. It's missing out on opportunities to, I don't know, streamline, automate, whatever. The junior guy who's been afraid to ask that question for, I don't know, for months, because, oh, no, it's a stupid question. I might not ask it. I'm not going to ask it, and etc., etc. So the developer, the I don't know, the account manager looking after a specific account, but you understand that some things are actually replicable. That's the kind of knowledge that you get. And then once you have that information, you can absorb, elaborate it, I don't know, maybe address it in one of the team meetings, or start implementing some changes, like, I don't know, a mentoring program within your team, or a knowledge share. So share, like someone can share something that they know how to do, and it would benefit people. Not doing, obviously, name and shame, never do that, but like, oh, there is this great process that we can apply, maybe some of you can find it useful. And then all of a sudden people realize, okay, I can automate here, I can streamline there, and get some time back. These are obviously just examples, but it all starts with this communication. So in a private room, in a safe environment, and also at a desk, I want to see how you work. So show me how you do your things. So okay, I think it all starts there.
As far as I understand, there are 3 steps involved. First steps is to create a safe environment for the actual individual, which is not yet communicating with anyone else. It's just with you together that you are showing your intention to create such an environment, and you want to invite that person, and you make clear that you want to invite other persons to the very same environment as well. So you create a space. Then you basically take a look, or in the same moment, you take a look at what this person's actually doing, struggling with the problems, these kind of things. And then the next step is to actually get these people then together to actually start to work with each other. You can then basically speak about what everyone is doing and start to the spark in the beginning, the motivation to speak to each other. So, that you actually work on the idea that people start to do that by themselves out of intrinsic motivation, not of extrinsic motivation coming by you, but intrinsic motivation. And at some point in time, it becomes habit and discipline. Would you say that's correctly wrapped up?
Yes, and I love the shift that you mentioned, that it starts like something external, extrinsic, because I, or the leader, is the channel through, at the beginning, the channel of every piece of communication. And then it becomes intrinsic because it becomes habit. And I think that's exactly it. That's exactly the process that we need to make sure we implement. But it all starts with trust, right? So if people start trusting you, and then they will start your process, they will start trusting your process, and then eventually they will start trusting one another. But you have to go through the steps, in my opinion. And if you are the leader, well, you have the one who has to start it. That's, again, there is no way around it. Nobody else is going to do that for you.
How do you, so that was the part where you get the people moving, you get the people together. Now people need to learn to speak to each other. We have in backstage before the show, we quickly discussed some where we had this idea of, we have the introverted people, the extroverted people. At least this is what LinkedIn is talking about, right? When it comes to communication, that are people talking too much, people talking too less. How do you get them together? These kind of ideas in the tech space, especially. So how do we, as tech leads, actually improve the situations for the people? So no, not really a foundation. We were there already, so we have created a space, or we started to do that. But how do we now support the people in developing the right skills to communicate? How can we improve each individual skill to communicate so that the barrier to communicate gets lower?
Yeah, well, I'd say the first thing, we need to understand why there is an individual barrier. This time we're talking about individual barrier. So you mentioned introvert, extrovert. That's just one side of the picture, right? Because what I also mentioned earlier on, we're using, for example, normally we're using a different language, a second language. We're using English, which for many of us is not first language. So we might be extrovert in our native language, but all of a sudden in the second language, we're not extroverts anymore. So you see, it's not like one-sided. There's more. It's actually, there's nuance. There's different things there to consider. And so you need to address whatever you think is the barrier, the problem there. So if it's language, then we work on the language. If it's attitude, then we work on attitude. If it's, I don't know, jealousy, I'm the best, I'm not going to share it, we act on that. Like people speak also about narcissists in a team. So the leaders should observe and understand, and then take the necessary action there. So some people want extreme guidance, so you have to be there and tell them what to do. Other people feel they're independent, so you can't do the same. And so you need to find the key. Again, it's not easy, and I totally understand that, but it's worthwhile, because then you reap the rewards later on. And yeah, so just to give you examples, if it's language, let's say, okay, so people might not be confident with their language, the level or the way they use it. So you tell them, look, there is a way to get things better. Do a couple of, I don't know, exercises, start recording yourself, for example, start speaking in front of a camera, and you will slowly become more confident with your approach. If it's, I don't know, if it is jealousy, then okay, you are the best at what you do, so make this person a star. Let them speak in the next team meeting, say, like, the same level, really, like the same level as you, as the leader. Say, okay, now he's the expert on this, even though maybe you're not too sure, but do that. Give him a stage for 10, 15 minutes, and they are going to explain whatever they're the expert on. If they feel they're super introvert, then you might think about some mentoring. Maybe there is a person they highly trust, only one. Okay, pair them together and start getting them to collaborate a bit more. There are various things you can do, but first thing is observation. So you need to observe the dynamics, and at an individual level understand where the barrier is,
Okay, and then I would like to go on that point, because I have made notes about this. So there is Dunbar's number. So it is the idea that we can only have, let's say, when it comes to teams and groups and societies, we can only handle between 5 and 15 people very closely in our daily life, right? And we can, as far as I remember, up to 150 people in general. And that is already a lot. So it fades. As soon as you get the next one, another one will slowly fade out of your conscious mind. So when you are a tech lead now, and we see that number, and so we have this typical 2 pizza team idea, or 5 to a maximum of 8 or 10 people. 10 is already a lot in tech teams, in my opinion, in my own experience. When you say, and I'm saying this now because you say that that the tech lead, or the leadership person of that team, right, who is actually supposed to make sure that thing happen, is basically communicating individually with the people in order to make them communicate with others, which means there is a lot of one-on-one going on, which means that this actual person, this leadership person, when this person is doing, isn't really capable, when the team gets larger, to work hands on him or herself. That's what comes to my mind, because the more you do that, the more you actually need to focus on the people. So you become a roadblock remover instead of actually being the best developer in town. That's the first aspect of it. So what is the team size which is actually working in that moment, when we come to that? And you said pairing people in. For me, that's sub teams. So you create sub teams in order to create to solve problems. That's how I understood it. Please catch me a little bit and bring me to a point where you would arrange these kind of things, because we have these limitations and we have this idea of sub-teams. How do you bring these things together without burning out as a tech lead?
Right. That's the question. So let's assume, okay, that the company you're working for doesn't fully support that, right? So it means that at some stage you have your job and also the leader job, right? So you need to, I don't know, carry on with your daily tasks, but at the same time, you're responsible for bringing the team together and doing this one-to-one, this sort of work, right? Well, what I tell you is it's an investment you do at the beginning. So yes, of course, at the beginning it's hard, right? Because you have your deadlines, your tasks, but also you have to make sure that the team dynamics don't fall apart. So the first 2-3 weeks, yes, are going to be really hard. But I suppose we know whenever we decide to step up and take a leadership role, we already know it's not going to be easy, and that we have to invest energy, right? But what I'm saying is you need to invest your energy in a clever way. So, and to me, clever means understanding the people you are dealing with so that you can take the necessary actions. And then in the second month, if you've worked well, the second month, you see the dynamics are getting better, that there is, for example, there is a strategy now, a team strategy that didn't exist before, that things are getting documented. So people feel safer. Okay, it's not only me, but the knowledge is shared and it's documented, right? So that's what I would say. Yes, it's hard. It doesn't make sense to hide it. It's hard. It's complicated. You get tired. You might need to put some extra hours in, of course, but that's the reality when you want to, I don't know, to upgrade, to get a better position, right? And I mean, this is going to happen anyway. Even if you do it well, or if you don't do it well, it's going to happen anyway. You're going to have a hard time at the beginning. You're going to do some extra hours. The choice is you do it well. In the following months, things will get better. You do it badly, things will never improve, and you're always going to be super busy and start banging your head around because
compounding effect in both ways, right?
Exactly. To answer your second question about sub-teams, I prefer to see it like a temporary mentorship program where you pair people to work together, or maybe just to sit next to each other while one is doing something and the other is just observing.
Okay.
But it has to be temporary, right? So you don't want to create the habit that, oh, I'm gonna go to that person because he knows, or they know, or she knows how to do it. No, it's temporary. So there is a clear objective. For example, let's say you feel you're an introvert, the other person is an extrovert. Sit with that person for a little while, for a week, for a couple of weeks, and see how they deal with, phone calls, or how they approach the client, for example. Okay. See if you can learn or absorb some information. And it's a clear task and it's limited. Okay. And then once this is over, you have another quick checkpoint. Say, okay, how did it go? What did you learn? How do you feel now? Same as if there is, let's say, a knowledge gap. So one person knows how to do something and the other doesn't. Again, it's a clear objective. So for example, learn how to run that particular report. And then, once you feel you have it, take notes, blah, 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 of course. Then in 2 weeks, your mentorship, we can call it, it's over. So make sure that in these 2 weeks, you absorb and you get what you need to get. So it's always temporary, right? You don't want to end up in a situation where you have sub teams, then again, don't communicate with each other and you have to start all over again. So
with sub teams, I was actually even more temporary. So I was thinking of, we are in the morning, we know what the mission is for today, we have some issues to solve, right? And those both people doing this, those two this, and a single person is doing that one when we have 5 people. That was the idea of sub-teams for me. This is how I handled them. This is more like imagine like in an army thing, you have a squad, right? And you have that squad doing specific things which are right now necessary to do, and you switch the people out to actually learn from each other how they solve things. That is, I think it's very similar, but the way of how you see temporary things is you have it. It was very interesting about the mentoring idea. For mine, it was more to get things done and learn by doing. But I was writing a year ago, a lot about or make videos a lot about seniority, and seniors should be mentors. And you pick that in your way very well. And so the idea of that other persons can learn from each other on the job, right? On an ongoing basis. So especially people who are more successful in what they do already, especially in communications, and you put a person next to that person who is maybe a little more shy. Don't want to say introverted, but a person who is not yet, let's say, confident enough to speak a lot about things, because people are generally afraid of, maybe I do something wrong, or as you said, an English problem, right? So maybe it's a second language English person, and it's a little bit like, I know what I actually want to talk about, but it's actually hard for me to do so. And when you work with the other person who is even though that person might not be an English speaking person or native person as well, you will see that it's okay to speak like that, because another person is doing the same thing, and English is actually more an industry language. Then actually you need to be a native speaking English person. And it's okay that people hear, listen, that you're actually a non-native speaker. And that would be maybe the next topic now, is like getting to your very specialization, because English, now we covered how to create an environment, how to have some methods to get people together. Now they are together, and we are in a highly industrialized, let's say, way of speaking English. That is how I would like to phrase it. And now I know it from the German people, like everyone here learned English in some way or another, but it is a totally different story to speak that on a day-to-day basis on the job and small talk. So those both things. So The first thing is, let's say, on the job itself. So speaking and writing, these kind of things, often like tools like Grammarly help you a lot there. But then you have the aspects of actually having a phone call or being on a business call. And then the other thing, and the big thing is, what are you going to do outside of the work when you talk to the people, like in the afternoon, after work, in the lunch break or something like that. So when someone in the tech industry, a software developer, tech lead, especially tech leads today, we are focusing on tech leads a little bit, because tech leads need, when you want to do what you just said half an hour ago, right? Create that environment. It is not helpful if you are not able to speak English in an English environment, right? So it makes it a little bit harder. So what are your tips and tricks? So what method would you recommend for a tech lead person to get into speaking English better and more confident? So your go-to thing. I have your book here. Maybe you can make a reference to that if you like. Just go ahead. How would you improve that?
Yeah, so a leader has to do many things, right, on the job. It has to influence, it has to negotiate, it has to be sociable, and so it's not like you can't go to a person, to a leader, to a tech leader and say, oh, you have to improve your English, because it doesn't mean anything, right? Just to give you examples, I've seen people with not so good level of English we could influence, no problem, okay, with maybe broken grammar, or with I don't know, not so full vocabulary. It didn't really matter, because they could influence. They were great at building social situations. They were amazing at networking, right? And then you had the exact opposite, like me, for example. Yeah, I'm here, so I might as well talk about me. I had a good level. I took my certification, blah, 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 but I used to dread networking events. I used to hate the lunch break. And, simply because like I thought always that I was less than, okay? And so it's in your mind. So what I would tell people is, what I would tell a leader is, when they tell you improve your English, always ask, what do you mean by improve your English? And then you start working on your objectives. So do you want me to improve my pronunciation? Okay, so work on clarity and getting a clear pronunciation. Do you want me to work on my intonation? Because I need to influence. And how do I influence? Through intonation. So work on the intonation. Do you want me to, I don't know, do I need to write documentation? That's another skill altogether, okay? Do you want me to negotiate? So do I need to go to the client and negotiate? So I need to learn how to present, how to speak up in public, how to master the art of negotiation. So you see, when people say, I need to improve my English, this is the questions I usually ask. What do you need to do with your English, Otherwise, yeah, you can take a general course and you sort of work on everything, but you never really focus on what you need when you go to the office the next day, right? And I say, let's reverse the approach. Let's focus on what you need there. And for a leader, it's just impossible not to do it, in my opinion. Because again, you might work on your level, you might get really good, but then if you don't master those arts, like I mentioned, intonation, pronunciation, negotiation, it's a lot of Asian, but they are they are there, and rhythm, clarity. This is what you need to work on as a leader. And you mentioned my book. In my book, I try to give ideas on how to get there, how to, for example, use your intonation and your body if you want to influence, or if you need to speak in front of a client, how to relax your mind so that you speak more clearly, in a way, how to articulate so that your pronunciation feels clear and understandable wherever you go. Yeah. So, because English is not only, I don't know, London or New York, you know, English is also Kuala Lumpur, is Beijing, is, I don't know, you know what I want to say, right? It's global. So everybody should understand you, not only one or two people here and there. And in my book, I try to communicate exactly that. So what can you do today, for example, if you want to become better at public speaking? Just follow those ideas, you know, to get logical flow, to get right intonation, to challenge yourself, to become clearer, etc., etc. Yeah. And that's also why I decided, you know, to create those many profiles in the book. So, because like a cybersecurity expert is different than a senior developer. It's different from a project manager, from a service delivery manager. So some things are common, but others are specific, the kind of language that we need, etc., etc. Yeah. So that's why I've included those things in my book. Yeah. Sorry.
No problem. When I'm just thinking about the next question. So first of all, blessing. So I was a little bit in maths right now. So you mentioned what you can do every day, right? What can you actually do every day? It would be, I think, an interesting thought now. So what would be the number one thing? So I try to break it down to something someone can take away basically from this stream right now. So you are a team lead now and you want to improve your English skills in order to communicate better. What would be the next thing you say you could do today on the job in order to improve that every day?
Right. The first thing to do, in my opinion, is obviously, provided you have your level and that you are there on the job, is to start speaking with a task and a timer so that you get your clarity, right? Give yourself, I don't know, 2 minutes to explain something. And try within those 2 minutes to explain whatever you need to explain. So that's time pressure, right? So what you do there, you start getting used to speaking under pressure because you have time limit and you physically see the timer in front of you and you have to be effective, right? So that teaches you how to speak under pressure. If you want to add an extra level, you put a camera in front of you and you video record yourself doing the exact same task. So you rewatch later and you can judge how effective you were in that situation, right? So these are small things, but these are things that challenge yourself to move on to the next level. And that's why I think it's something that you don't normally do, right? When they tell you improve your English, they normally give you a standard book with some exercises, some extra vocabulary you need to learn, but they never really challenge you to go onto a situation like this where you are forced to speak under pressure with a specific task, with a specific time, and with a lot of pressure on you. And that's how you become a better speaker, right? And then in time you get more and more difficult tasks. You know, you start with a simple description, but then you can explore talking about your job, your, I don't know, whatever, your aspirations, your desires. You simulate job interviews, whatever. But it all starts with that change in your mindset. I mean, I have to use English. I have to use it every day at work. So I might as well step up and start, you know, using it more effectively. Yeah. Obviously, we're talking about people who have a good understanding of the language already. But, you know, if you're a tech lead in a multinational environment, it means that you can speak the language and you can understand it. You just want to become a better communicator. Yeah.
So I do something very similar for myself for years on Descript or with Descript. So I sit in front of Descript and I record things. When I tried a little a little bit here on a YouTube channel, on a Substack, doing videos. I made a lot of videos, and when it got to the short form video, it became very interesting because I only had 1 minute time. Today you have 3 minutes time because it is easier to get things done in 3 minutes because some topics are too complicated. But if you try to get a complicated topic, which you normally would do a 30-minute video about that, and you try to pack that in 1 minute, that is hard. That is really hard. You do at least 10 takes, and every take comes closer to the goal. And you really learn a lot during that process, what you can actually leave out of something to get quicker to the actual point and try to condense that. And this is how people later came to the idea of hook, these kind of things, and write short things. In the first 30% of your post, you should be already at the point, and the rest is basically sugarcoating, these kind of things. But that actually helped me a lot to articulate myself better because I was a very bad person. I was talking way too much, right? Still, I have a tendency to talk a lot, as you might listen to, because that's a stream, a little bit more like an entertainer here as well. But it is very hard during meetings to actually get things to the point. I agree with that, and I only can recommend to train that. I really like that approach. I would actually integrate that. So if I want to become better every day, I need to put that I need to integrate some discipline to my life. That is what I'm talking about. So when I would take your method right now, I would have a recording device of choice. I would recommend Descript because you actually see the transcript and you can work with that. And you could see like the AI of it's the Underlord AI. You can say edit for clarity, and it would cut out a lot of things which are unnecessary to say. That's interesting as well. And I would just maybe several thoughts a day record with that tool and take a look how I would improve myself in order to get better, to not mix up words and these things. That was an issue for me as well, because I made a lot of spelling mistakes. Well, it is normal to do that while you communicate because you are in a stream, you're like in an editor mode, right? But it was heavy. It was heavy in the beginning. I was mismatching so many words. It wasn't nice. And I improved a lot by doing that and realizing that I'm talking too fast. I'm talking too fast for a person who is not good enough to talk that fast. So I needed to reduce my beats per minute actually a little bit in order to raise them step by step again until I get to the point where I can fluently be on a good level. That helped me a lot, but I needed to do it daily, in fact, to have some effect on that one.
What I tell people is slow down to get there faster, because we have this idea that fluency means speaking fast, but it's not necessarily true. And there are many good communicators who are actually slow, so, and they might be native or non-native, it doesn't really make a difference, but they are slow because clarity is what truly matters, especially when you are in an international context. So yeah, slow down, start, being easier on yourself, take your pauses, articulate clearly. That's all okay, especially at the beginning. It's a process, it's a journey, You start with small tasks. If you don't feel safe, you can even start reading, reading aloud in front of camera and with timer. So you're reading a message. And then through reading, you start, going up and down, working on intonation, checking when you need to pause. And then you move on to actually explaining things without reading, So you don't need to be hard on yourself. You can improve bit by bit, but with a strategy, with a clear method there. Yeah. So that's what I would recommend anyway.
As a last big topic for today, I would have a question for you for advice, because that is what I see very often, is that you need to respond to people as well, not only actively talk something when you have your slot, but someone is telling something during a dialogue, and in your mind, maybe in your native language, you have already formulated something you want to say right now, but you cannot. So first of all, it's not about how to learn better to actually do that and interrupt the other person. It is a little bit how, in a second language, to lead or follow up in those dialogues with people, right? So you want to exchange thoughts and ideas and not being, let's say, too interruptive, and on the other hand, not being too passive. So how would you manage that, doing that in your not native language, English, in that moment?
Right. Well, one thing is essential. We need to simplify, right? Because when you compare your first language with English, it's second language, you will never be able to have the same things there, right? Because you developed your full, well-respected ego in your first language. Now, that ego doesn't exist in a second language, right? So that's the first thing you need to let go of. Once you do that, things become way easier, right? It's a little bit like children, yeah? They learn because they try, they make mistakes, everybody tell them, and they don't care because for them it's normal, to be the ones who don't know things. They haven't got a well-developed ego like adults have. So they're okay. And that's how you learn, by making mistakes, trying, and getting the feedback and trying again until you actually get it right. And so this is the first big step, because I say, okay, I simplify things in my head. I make simple sentences, easier phrases. It's not a big problem. But if you get into that mindset and you start, you start approaching things in that way, then you slowly move into thinking in English, right? Which is a big barrier. So, because normally what happens, you think in your language, you translate, and then you try to speak, which slows things down and makes a mess. So simplify and create some like very basic ideas. I like to call it this bullet point thinking. You sort of create bullet points and then you connect them using simple connectors to create a logical flow. So it's like having a grid in your mind and populating it slowly. Okay, that's how you create this idea of thinking directly in English. And so it's easier. You have your ideas and you know how to let them out. Yeah,
that was my journey as well. So my native language is German, so I can speak totally different in German. I see that when I sometimes do live streams in German, which is rare, but it happens. I can formulate things way more complex and way more deep, sometimes even philosophic, right? These kind of things. I can be very precise in these kind of things. Then I learned over time to do something, not to that degree, but I started to think in English. I realized in the beginning I didn't do that. That's what you just mentioned. Then I became better in being in English context, and I could start to speak more fluent English. I could even do small talk. I can do business talk. I can stream. I can create intro videos. I can do all these kind of things. What I cannot do, and I still have problems with that, is to actually switch between these contexts. I think that's the next level. It is like that, you speak here or I speak here with you, and when my wife would come now and tell something in German, I could immediately answer in German while having a German context open, while being in an English context here. That is still hard for me, because sometimes I then look at another person and I'm like, all the German words are missing. They are not existing because there's this. I spend so much energy into keeping up the English context while I'm there, so I'm confident in that one. But it takes so much energy that there is no RAM left, right, for my German version. So I need more RAM actually to store both at the same time. That's how I feel. So what do you think about your thing? Like multiple levels, or am I just a special person having problems here?
I think it's kind of normal, to be honest. When you are multilingual, switching from one to another, it's always confusing. And you create a situation where you speak English to an Italian, or you speak Italian to an American, and then you create confusion. But that's kind of normal, I guess, because when you become bilingual, you have two separate areas there that look after the two languages. And so going out of context, suddenly it's complicated. But that's okay, because normally we do different things with the languages, right? So, for example, I might work in English, and then I might talk to my family in Italian, for example. So it's really rare that the two things cross. Obviously, if you live in a different country, or if your partner was, say, for example, if your partner was English, then things would be different, because you would have like English for work and English for private life, So it truly depends on the situation. But the normal situation is that you have these two different parts, and that they're doing two different things. And if they need to obviously meet, it gets complicated. But I guess it's okay. It's the beauty of being bilingual or multilingual. It's absolutely a blessing, in my opinion. So
yeah, I think so as well. So but that just for the it's still there, and it doesn't seem to get better. But I agree, it's not really necessary, because I don't need to switch during our conversation, and I don't need to switch too much in other conversations. And if I just need to toss an English sentence while speaking German, it's not a problem. It is just you can't be in two conversations at the same time. That's probably what translators are doing. You need to train that specifically. I wouldn't be a very fluent translator, to be honest.
It's a different skill, so to be a translator, you need to do something completely different. Something that, for me, for example, is very hard. When people ask me, oh, how do you say such and such in English or in Italian or in Spanish? I have no idea.
Because you don't say it that way in that language. That's the point. Very often, like we have sayings in German where I think, how would I say that? And the point is, the English don't use it that way. So there is no saying like this. So you need to get the point in a different way, and that's complicated. Right?
Exactly. But even like sometimes it gets even worse when they ask you, I don't know, simple word. How do you say this in such and such language? You don't know, because they ask you to switch. Then maybe 10 minutes later, you're talking in the other language. You use the word, and people go, oh, so you knew how to say that? Yeah, I knew, but at that time I couldn't actually make the matching, which is normal, because translating, it's a completely different job. And for example, for me, the work I do with people, I wouldn't be able to do that in a different language. So it can only be done in English, because if you ask me to act as a translator, then I get lost. This is not something that I would be able to do, It was funny, the other day they invited me to a bilingual podcast. So it was in English, but at some stage we had to switch to Spanish, which was a lovely experience, but a very complicated one, because using the two languages at the same time, it was complicated, but it was a great experience. And yeah, so that's something that I don't know, we can all get better at. But most of the time, it is really not necessary. So if I were you, I would be okay with it, Adrian. Like, that's okay. Don't mix the two, or mix them, and it's fine. Even no problem.
We have a word for that. It's called Dinglish. It's basically Deutsch and English. Denglish. It's basically if you just you just use the words as it. Interestingly, it works in Germany because people understand both languages, and you can just say it and it works. It's quite funny. And interestingly, it is often working with others as well, because there are so many common words between the languages. So, well, interesting part. But we are coming now to an ending right now, and we have this book still here. I want to promote it because I really like that book. Why do I like this book? It's basically written by Daniel, right? Easy English for IT. And what I really like about that, it's not the title in Italian. I never found out what it actually means, what's there. But everything else is totally in English, which is great. And what I really like about that is not a novel. It is really like a book you would know from school, where you have a topic in mind and you want to read about that topic and you want to dig into that topic. And it's not a large book, but it contains so much knowledge and so much practical knowledge, like the hack method. So the basically four letters, hack, right? This is hone, action, and collaboration, and kudos. I always miss the last one, the kudos one.
Yeah, it's very important.
The kudos one. I really like those ideas. When you read this, you really feel like, okay, I can apply this to my daily life. And this is the reason why I would recommend this book for everyone who is in IT in general. So of course would work in other industries as well, but it is special software developers, QA persons, infrastructure persons, leadership persons. And so I would definitely recommend this. It is a thing you should have if you even if you're an English person. I would recommend this when you work in an international environment. That is what I want to add as well, because being an English speaking person, and I heard that often, it's like it is no problem to work with Australians, the US people. That's the same common idea of how they use the language. But as soon as you join an environment where there are a lot of people, like let's say from Eastern Europe, Southern Europe, and they barely speak English, and you speak English very well, then you overwhelm the others with your language skills. And you will face the inverted problems case, actually. And that book is actually the translation in between those both worlds, which I really like and recommend in that moment. How do you get that book, and how can people reach out to you?
Yeah, so the book is on Amazon, and you can either look for Easy English for IT, or you can look for my name, 𝘶𝘶𝘶𝘶, depending on the country you are in, because Amazon, the market changes, so there is not one unique link. But the good thing is that you can find it in your local Amazon page, and then you can read a sample there if you want, so you can check what the book is about. And yeah, and then you can decide. You can get the paperback or the ebook if you prefer going on Kindle, whatever. And so yeah, Amazon would be the place to get the book, and LinkedIn would be the place to connect with me. So I am active there, and I share my things almost daily, tips, stories. Some of them are funny, some of them are not so funny, but I like sharing a part of like where I come from, my background, but also what I do today, and giving some ideas, to get to the communication level we discussed. And yeah, so these will be the two main channels. So Amazon for the book, LinkedIn for the person, and yeah, then I have a YouTube channel, a website, but everything is connected through my LinkedIn page. So yeah, absolutely.
Thanks a lot. So thank you very much for sharing all these interesting ideas and learnings with us. And of course, the methods you use to create environments, to get people together, how to form teams and improve the communication. So what everyone can do basically on one own, right? These kind of ideas, I think, the takeaways from that session, what everyone can do. That's great. If you joined late, I recommend to rewatch that one, because that's actually a great one. But we will post some clips about that in the coming days on our LinkedIn profiles as well. Thanks a lot, everyone. And I wish you a great time. And I'm pretty sure that won't be the last time we're meeting online on some point, right?
Hopefully not. Hopefully not. Thank you very much, everybody. And yeah,